Story 1, The Whistling in Black Pine Forest. 22-year-old Ethan loved camping. Every summer, he traveled across remote areas searching for untouched wilderness. He enjoyed being alone. No phones. No internet. Just him and nature. One October evening, Ethan arrived at Black Pine Forest. The locals had warned him not to stay overnight. People hear strange whistles out there, an old gas station owner told him. Ethan laughed. Probably birds. The old man didn't smile. Birds don't whistle your name. The warning stayed in Ethan's mind as he drove toward the forest. The woods were enormous. Tall black pine trees stretched endlessly into the distance. By sunset, Ethan found a clearing beside a small creek and set up camp. The first few hours were peaceful. He cooked dinner, listened to music, and watched the stars. Around midnight, he crawled into his tent. That's when he heard it. A whistle. Soft. Long. Coming from somewhere deep between the trees. Ethan sat up. The sound repeated. A single haunting note drifting through the darkness. He unzipped the tent and looked outside. Nothing. Only endless trees illuminated by moonlight. After a few minutes, the whistling stopped. He returned to sleep. At exactly 2:17 a.m., he woke again. The whistle had returned. This time it was closer. Much closer. The sound seemed to come from just beyond the edge of his campsite. Ethan grabbed a flashlight. Hello? No answer. Only silence. Then, a whistle from behind him. He spun around. Nothing. His heart began racing. The sound moved again. Left. Right. Behind. It circled him. Like something was playing a game. Suddenly the whistle stopped. Then a voice whispered from the darkness. Ethan. His blood froze. Nobody should have known his name. He swung the flashlight toward the trees. Nothing. But he could feel eyes watching him. He rushed back into his tent and zipped it shut. Minutes passed. Then came another whistle. Followed by another whisper. Ethan. This time it sounded closer. Almost outside the tent. He gripped his flashlight and remained awake until dawn. The moment sunlight appeared, he packed everything and left. As he loaded his truck, he noticed something strange. Footprints. Hundreds of footprints. Circling his campsite. But they weren't human. Each print had 3 long toes. And they surrounded the tent from every direction. A cold chill ran through him. Someone, or something, had spent the entire night walking around his camp. Ethan drove straight to the nearest town. When he told the gas station owner what happened, the old man's face turned pale. You heard it call your name? Ethan nodded. The old man sighed. You're lucky. What do you mean? The old man looked toward the forest. The ones who answer never come back. Ethan never returned to Black Pine Forest. Years later, he still wakes up some nights hearing a faint whistle outside his window. And every time he checks. Story 2, The Cabin That Wasn't on Any Map. In the fall of 2019, 4 friends, Jake, Mason, Tyler, and Chris, planned a weekend hiking trip deep inside the remote wilderness of northern Montana. All of them were experienced hikers. They carried GPS devices, emergency supplies, satellite radios, and detailed maps. Getting lost wasn't something they worried about. Or so they thought. The first day went perfectly. The weather was clear. The trails were easy to follow. By late afternoon, they had traveled nearly 15 miles into the forest. That's when the fog appeared. It rolled between the trees so quickly it seemed unnatural. Within minutes, visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. The trail disappeared. Their GPS devices suddenly lost signal. Even the compass began spinning strangely. "Let's set up camp," Jake suggested. "We'll continue tomorrow." The others agreed. As they searched for a suitable campsite, Chris noticed something unusual. A faint light. Far ahead in the fog. "Guys, do you see that?" The others turned. A yellow glow flickered through the trees. At first they thought it might be another group of campers. Relieved, they followed the light. The deeper they walked, the stranger things became. The forest was completely silent. No birds. No insects. No wind. Nothing. Finally, they reached the source. A small wooden cabin stood alone among the trees. The structure looked ancient. Its wood was dark and weathered. One of the windows glowed with warm yellow light. Tyler frowned. "Why isn't this on the map?" Nobody had an answer. Jake knocked on the door. No response. He knocked again. Silence. The door slowly creaked open. The cabin was empty. Inside stood a table, 4 chairs, an old fireplace, and several dusty lanterns. The strange thing was the fire. Fresh flames burned inside the fireplace. Someone had to be there recently. Yet no footprints surrounded the cabin. Not a single one. The friends exchanged nervous glances. Night was approaching fast. Against their better judgment, they decided to stay. The cabin offered shelter from the cold. As darkness settled outside, an uneasy feeling filled the room. Chris couldn't shake the sensation that someone was watching them. At around midnight, Tyler woke suddenly. He heard footsteps outside. Slow. Heavy. Crunch. 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 Something was circling the cabin. He sat up. The others were asleep. The footsteps continued, slowly moving around the walls. Then they stopped directly outside the window. Tyler gathered his courage and peeked through the glass. Nothing. Only fog. He returned to his sleeping bag. Seconds later, a loud knock echoed through the cabin. Bang! Everyone jumped awake. Another knock. Bang! Bang! Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then a voice came from outside. A woman's voice. Soft. Calm. Please let me in. The friends stared at each other. There had been no sign of anyone all day. The voice repeated. Please let me in. I'm lost. Jake approached the window. Before he could look outside, Chris grabbed his arm. Don't. Why? Chris pointed toward the door. A shadow stood beneath it. The shadow was wrong. The shape looked human. But it was nearly 7 feet tall. And perfectly still. The woman spoke again. Please let me in. Then her voice changed. Deeper. Distorted. Like several people speaking at once. Please let us in. Every hair on their bodies stood up. The knocking resumed. Harder. Violent. Bang. 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 The walls shook. The windows rattled. Yet the door never opened. The friends sat frozen until sunrise. As the first rays of light entered the cabin, the knocking stopped. The forest became quiet again. They waited another hour before opening the door. Outside, the fog had vanished. The strange thing standing near the cabin was gone. But something else remained. Huge footprints. Each one nearly twice the size of a man's foot. The tracks circled the cabin dozens of times before disappearing into the woods. Terrified, the group packed immediately and left. After several hours of hiking, they finally reached a ranger station. When they described the cabin, the ranger looked confused. "There are no cabins in that section of forest. We stayed in one last night," Jake insisted. The ranger shook his head. "No, there aren't any." The next morning, the ranger joined them and returned to the location. The clearing was there. The trees were there. But the cabin was gone. Completely gone. No foundation. No debris. No ashes. Nothing. As if it had never existed. To this day, all four men swear they spent the night inside that cabin. And none of them have ever returned to those woods. Because sometimes, in the deepest parts of the forest, not every shelter wants to keep you safe. Story 3, The Thing Beneath the Forest Floor. In the summer of 2022, Park Ranger Daniel Carter was assigned to patrol one of the most isolated sections of forest in the Pacific Northwest. The area was enormous. Miles of dense trees stretched in every direction. Very few hikers ever visited that part of the woods. And those who did rarely stayed long. Over the years, dozens of strange reports had come from the area. People claimed they heard voices coming from underground. Others reported seeing the earth move as if something huge was crawling beneath it. Most dismissed the stories as imagination. Daniel did too. Until the night he experienced it himself. It began with a missing person report. A 26-year-old hiker named Rachel had failed to return from a weekend trip. Her vehicle was discovered abandoned near an old trailhead. Daniel joined the search team immediately. For 2 days they combed the forest. No sign of Rachel. No footprints. No campsite. Nothing. On the third day, Daniel noticed something unusual. A patch of disturbed earth near a remote section of the trail. The soil appeared freshly overturned, as though something had pushed upward from beneath it. He knelt to investigate. That's when he heard it. A voice. Faint. Weak. Coming from below the ground. "Help me." Daniel froze. The voice sounded exactly like Rachel. He called the rest of the search team. But when they arrived, the voice had vanished. The team searched the area. Nothing. No tunnels. No caves. No openings. Eventually the others left. But Daniel couldn't stop thinking about it. That evening he returned alone. The forest felt wrong. Unnaturally quiet. Even the wind seemed absent. As darkness settled, Daniel sat near the disturbed earth. Hours passed. Then suddenly, the ground moved. Not a little. A lot. The soil bulged upward like a massive wave. Daniel jumped to his feet. The earth continued rising, traveling beneath the forest floor, moving between the trees. Something enormous was underneath. Something alive. His flashlight trembled in his hands. The movement stopped 20 yards away. Silence returned. Then came the voice. "Daniel." His heart nearly stopped. The voice sounded exactly like his wife. She was hundreds of miles away. "Daniel, help me." The voice came from beneath the ground. Directly beneath his feet. He backed away. The earth shifted again. Slowly. Following him. Then another voice. His brother. Then his mother. Then Rachel. Dozens of voices began calling his name. All from underground. All pleading for help. The forest echoed with desperate cries. Daniel ran. Branches whipped against his face. Roots snagged his boots. Behind him, the earth continued moving. A giant mound racing beneath the surface. Keeping pace. Following. The voices grew louder. Don't leave us. Help us. We're trapped. Daniel never stopped running. Eventually he reached his truck and sped away. The next morning, a larger search team returned to investigate. They found something horrifying. Fresh ground disturbances stretched for miles through the forest. Huge trails where the earth appeared to have risen and shifted. As if something gigantic had tunneled beneath the entire area. Rachel was never found. Neither were several other missing hikers linked to that forest over the years. A month later, Daniel submitted his resignation. Before leaving, he shared one final detail. Something he had never told anyone. When he reached his truck that night and looked back toward the trees, he saw hundreds of human faces pushing up from beneath the soil. Not bodies. Just faces. Screaming silently. Trying to escape. Then they were dragged back underground. Daniel never entered another forest again. Even now, he refuses to discuss what happened. But sometimes, late at night, he receives strange voicemails on his phone. Voicemails containing only static. And beneath the static, faint voices, calling his name, begging him to come back. Some people believe forests hide dangerous animals. Others believe they hide dangerous people. But if Daniel's story